okay. I'm good.
No, I just think I missed the high school supervisor / director.
All right. Hello, everybody. Today is February 28th, Wednesday, February 28th, and this is our Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities. We're meeting in the Beverly Middle School Library in a remote setup. Everybody who's on this committee is here in person. We do have some remote participants. I see one right now, Dr. Andre Morgan. We are allowed to meet in a remote setup thanks to rules and extensions by the governor as well as our own city of Beverly. I'm not going to read that whole statement this evening. We're quite tight on time, and we have no one participating remotely that is a voter. So our first order of business is for me to introduce. We have a new community member, Miss Spanks. And she'll be joining us and voting on all things FNF moving forward, except for item number 1 on our agenda, which is approval of last month's meeting minutes. And so I put those on my screen. For those who were here, I'm looking for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from last meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Silva. Are there any corrections, additions, anything that was omitted? Did anybody see anything? Got any typos, Mr. Manzo? Wow. Okay, fantastic. All right, so there's a motion on the table. Again, I will point out, Ms. Spanks, you're going to report that you abstained because you weren't here. Everybody who was here, motion on the table to approve the meeting minutes as is. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3. Were you not here?
I was here, but I wasn't really here, so I'm going to abstain as well.
Oh, okay. So, Ms. Coelho, will you note that Mr. Manzo also abstained? And so for everybody, the millions of people watching from home, last meeting, Mr. Manzo had not officially been reappointed to this committee, I believe. And so from a technicality point of view, yes, you were here, but you refrained from voting, as I recall, to wait for us to do the official naming of our committee members onto our committee. So thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is gifts to schools. And so that is on my screen right now. I'll make it a little larger. A fantastic donation of $2,500 to the middle school, $688.17 to the preschool. Huge district-wide grant of $15,000 and $1,000 from BevEd that's directed to here in the Beverly Middle School Library for a total of $19,188.17. I would entertain a motion to accept with gratitude, as Ms. Abel says, these gifts to schools.
Motion.
Thank you,
Second.
Dr. Silva. Thank you for the second, Ms. Coelho. Any questions or comments other than our incredible gratitude? So, Ms. Spanks, you are welcome to vote on this, and you are welcome from this point on to raise your hand and ask questions if you have any questions. And if you do want to speak, we ask that you push the button and change your little microphone from red to green. Okay, motion on the table. All those in favor of accepting the gifts to schools? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 0. Ms. Coelho, if you could note that, thank you. Our next item on our agenda is acceptance of grants. Ms. Sherburne, would you like to speak to the grants that I've put on the screen?
Sure, we have 2 new DESE grants that we would like to have approved. The first one is grant number 125. It's a math acceleration grant. That is, the purpose of this grant is to fund the implementation of initiatives for the acceleration academies, which we had one last week during February vacation that we'll be talking about in the committee of the whole meeting. And that grant is for $220,000. And then we have grant number 422, which is a Perkins program improvement and equipment grant for $6,150. As you know, we already have a grant 400 that is the Perkins grant, and this is an addition. So we're looking for approval of $226,150.
Do I have a motion by someone on the committee?
Second.
I missed the first.
Oh,
Motion, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo, and second by Dr.
Second.
Silva. Anybody have any questions for Ms. Sherburne on these particular grants? We love when money comes into the system. There's a motion on the table. All those in favor? 5-0. Okay. The next item on our agenda is student activity accounts.
How
No,
about
a
the
budget transfer. Sorry, I jumped over the budget transfer.
That's
Next
okay.
item is a budget transfer. Transfer number
1058.
1058. It is on my screen right now. I'm going to scroll to the, okay, I just needed to scroll. Let me see if I can make it a little bigger for everybody who wants to look at it. All right, that's about as big as it can get and still all fit on one screen. Ms. Sherburne, would you like to speak to this?
This transfer is to put money into the Buildings and Grounds overtime line in the amount of $29,793, and that was to be covering for the summer overtime that we had, that account was in the negative, and we took it from various accounts that in the schools. So Mr. Shiroli is utilizing the custodial overtime in the summer and other various times. And so this was to cover that, what we used during the summer.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to accept this transfer.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. A second.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Silva. Anybody have any questions about this transfer? Yes, Mr. Manzo.
One quick one. So the reason why you have to do the transfers is because it's going from building-specific lines to system-wide overtime, because it's all overtime.
Right, it's all overtime, but as you recall, that if I went from a BG to a BG, I don't need to come to you.
Okay, yeah.
But if I'm going from an AY to a BG, I would need to
So
come
they're
to
coming
you.
from building accounts and going to,
Going to the general, yeah.
thank you.
And you're right, sometimes it's like, it's all overtime, wouldn't it be the same thing, but it's a cost center.
It's all custodian overtime, too, so it's quite clean.
Yep.
All right, any other questions? There's a motion on the table. All those in favor? 5-0. Next item on the agenda is
Next
our
up-
student activity accounts.
Yes, so what happened is we just recently had a student activity audit on both the Beverly High School and the Beverly Middle School. We're still waiting for results from that audit, but while we were in there, we were talking about new clubs that have been formed or new activities within the student activities at the high school. And I was going to be bringing forward 3 or 4 of them from the high school, but then I neglected to come each year to add a new class of 2027, 26, 25. So we decided that we would come forward and have the school committee accept the student activities that we have as of 1/1/24, and then moving forward, if Mr. Thomas decides that he's going to have a new club or a new activity, a new group of activities, I should say, then he would come here first and ask for that approval before we just implement it. So this is cleaning up to state what we have right now in the student. So we have these categories. So we're just looking for the school committee to approve that these are the student activities groups that we have currently.
And before we open for discussion, we need a motion.
So moved.
All right. The motion is to accept this group of student activities. Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Mr. Manzo.
Quick one. Do you have to come before the committee to then dissolve some of these? And so, for example, the class of 23.
Yeah, so that's not one of the rules and regulations,
Okay.
that it's just that the school committee needs to accept it, just like accepting the grants. We need to accept what we put through. So, and when we do have them coming forward, it would be, this is the name of the new activity, who the advisor is, what the purpose of the activity is, and it's signed by the advisor and the principal. So before we bring in any new ideas, they would be coming to you and then moving forward. But yeah, they never ask to remove them.
Because eventually they do go away, right? So clubs will change, they'll come and go.
Yeah, I think some of these have probably been here forever. Some of them, Mr. Thomas might be researching to see, what's left in it, and it's still an active purpose.
So
Just to clarify too, that doesn't mean that these are every club that exists. It just means they're ones that have fiscal, that are using the account to store money, so that they're collecting money or, utilizing that account as their home base for their finances. So there are clubs that don't have any finances associated with them, and they exist just on their own, and they don't have to come forward for each club. It's only if they're going to add a fiscal component to it that we're going to be responsible for managing their finances and being audited on.
Kind of like people with no bank accounts. So to be very clear, we have one account, and then we, almost like in Quicken, we make subcategories, but there are 2 student activity accounts.
High school and middle school.
And within them, we have these subdivisions.
Yes.
And some lucky person needs to keep track of all of this money came in and it's really earmarked for this versus
Yes.
that.
Yep. And the
Goodness
principals
gracious,
are the
bless
ones
that
that are
person.
responsible of it. I have nothing involved in this at all. The principals are the ones that sign the checks, and we have a treasurer at the high school, and one of the middle school clerks handles it here for the middle school. And so, one thing that I believe that's going to happen in the future is that Miss Oliver is going to be saying, okay, I just want a grade 6. I don't need to have each group, but
Each
when
team.
Mr. Posca set it up many years ago, that he did have it delineated that, and we're finding it's now hard to, we really should be saying 5th grade, 6th grade. So I do believe that'll come forward, and when that comes forward, I'd want her to bring that forward, that I'm collapsing all of these and creating one, just so that the committee knows.
Fantastic. All right, any other questions for Ms. Sherburne on the student activity accounts? All right, there's a motion on the table. All those in favor? 5-0. Next item, our building and grounds update. And so, Ms. Spanks, in general, we get this report and in our packets, and we look at it ahead of time, and if we have any questions, we can bring them to this meeting, or we can ask our questions in email, and then maybe at this meeting, we get an answer to our questions. But as a general rule of thumb, because of the format of our meetings and the fact that we have them stacked, meaning this meeting is going to go from 6:30 to 7:30, and then we have another meeting from 7:30 to, goodness gracious, who knows when this evening. We typically don't spend very much time on this actual report, except once in the beginning of the school year and once at the end of the school year when we have Mr. B&G, the head of Buildings and Grounds, in, and then we really badger him with all kinds of questions. That said, if you looked and you have any questions, especially because this is your first meeting, we can absolutely entertain any questions you might have on this report.
Thank you. I don't think I have any questions. I did read through this.
Fantastic. Anybody else come with any questions on the B&G report? All right, cool.
Well, I don't have a question, but
oh.
just a comment.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just wanted to point out, because I think it's something that we haven't had an opportunity to update often, under the Beverly Middle School section, just a sort of a little update on the repairs regarding the flood. I think it's kind of just hidden in there, but it's a pretty big, significant accomplishment, I think. And so, we had done most of the repair work and through, I think, probably October 15th, and then we had put a kind of a halt to it at that point. And then recently, the whiteboards and shades arrived, and that they spent time replacing those in all of those rooms. So that was a great step towards total restoration. And then the remainder of the work that will be done is going to be the millwork. We chose to have that done over the summer to limit disruption to those classrooms. So I just wanted to point that out because I don't think we've given a strong update on how that work is going. And it was just sort of embedded in here, but it looks small, but it was actually a pretty big accomplishment. So that's all.
Well, thank you for that, Dr. Trocheck. All right, the next item on our agenda is the Finance and Facilities Administrative Update.
So, happy leap year day before leap year day tomorrow. The next thing we have is the under administration update. We're going to be introducing Ryan Wood, our new athletic director. He's going to be talking about revenues and participation, and we're going to have a master athletic coaching position report out there for you so that when any new positions come up, we all know how many we have. And then discussion on snow removal at the bus stops was a topic that was brought forth to me to bring up for discussion. And then I have the financial reports, revenues, and expenses. So I would like to introduce Mr. Ryan Wood. He's assumed the role of the athletic director since January 2nd, 2024, upon the retirement of Mr. Dan Keefe. Mr. Wood transitioned from a role of assistant principal at BHS, where he was hired in 2021. Previously, he served in various administration roles at Neshoba Vocational Technical High School prior to coming to BHS. And his position also administered to athletics. His entry plan includes a goal to increase athletic participation on all levels at BHS and enhance the relationships between the high school and the youth sports in the city of Beverly. And that was given to me by Mr. Thomas as an introduction, so introducing him. And then I asked Mr. Wood to bring forth a little information about athletics in addition to the request that I had brought last month that we had to table because I forgot to put the asterisks to increase the positions. So this one here is the 2023 Athletic Department Revenue report. And that's kind of telling you what we've had, so we've only had 2 seasons, the fall season and the winter season. So if you have any specific questions, this report will break out what we have by sports, what the fee is, what our expected revenue is, how much was paid, anything that's outstanding as of this point. We still collect, we're always collecting. This will tell you the number of participants. And then Mary Morency, our athletic bookkeeper, keeps great records and will show you that of the 43 participants in football, 33 of them pay full. And then we have 10 that receive scholarships, and we'll show you the variations of scholarships, 25% off, 50% off, 75 or 100. And then we also note what the scholarship amount is awarded. And just to keep in mind for everyone is that we do not have a pool of money that's an endowment for scholarships. Scholarships just means he's running the program with 10,000 less. Or that season he had to run the program and he wasn't receiving if everybody was full pay. And then we have the winter sports. So I don't know if Ryan wants to say anything about this or if anybody has any questions, but he does this report, and we'll get one at the end of the year for each school year.
Thank you, Gene. If you guys have any questions in regards to that, I'd be glad to field those.
All right, I'm looking around the table. I have a question, but I always like to defer calling on myself.
Seniority, yeah. I don't really have a question. I just wanted to welcome you to the position. I know the AD is, high school AD is one of the more challenging positions in the district. You have a lot of plates in the air all year round, and so I wish you the best in that position.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, so I guess my question has to do with, do you have in mind, based on the previous slide and your goals of increasing participation and then increasing the connection with the middle school programs, how you might accomplish those goals?
Yeah, so, coming into the winter season, just about halfway through, I really wanted to be able to reach out to, our youth hockey programs, boys and girls, youth basketball, and any other ancillary, youth groups that are associated with any other winter sports. And, since reaching out, I've made some really good connections in regards to, the youth hockey and youth basketball. We've offered, youth basketball night as a, promotional thing for the student athletes that are involved in that sport. And, had also other, events for youth hockey. It was a great event. We had a packed house, and at the end of the game, all the youth hockey players had a program and all the players came out into the foyer and they were signing the program, and it was a really cool event, and the kids were really juiced up to see all the the kids in their gear, and but that's kind of my first step in this particular process is making sure that not to establish a feeder program, so to speak, but really make that connection so that kids at elementary level and middle school level know what sports we have offered, know in regards to who some of the players are, and are able to kind of put a face to names and get charged up about Beverly athletics.
All right, I'm looking again before I call on myself again. Oh, okay. Have you thought about increasing the fan base by either lowering or dropping the fee for students? So that, we just look at boys basketball this year compared to last year, right? Heck of a fan base last year, not so much this year. And I wonder if we could still generate a decent amount of revenue, especially when we play Peabody and so many Peabody fans come over, charge, external people, but let students get in like with their student ID, if that might help. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, myself and Mr. Thomas, we talked about this in many different levels on whether it's a promo night in regards to working with Beverly Bootstraps in lieu of a payment. They bring a particular item that's of need, and then we've even talked about maybe like a season pass that would lower the cost for all of those particular events and kind of make it kind of a real incentive item for students to have that pass and be able to utilize that. But those are the type of things that I've thought about in regards. But I think just my goal as an athletic director, I foresee stands being full and kids enjoying themselves and supporting their team. So I'm always thinking about other ways to really enhance our student population at those events.
Fantastic. I will say I've been there on a couple of the birthday wishes night. Just really very cool that our athletes are doing community service. They're giving back to the same community that often gives to them, right? Any given sports team does fundraising. Yes, Dr. Silva.
I finish.
So I just like to see we're out there. We as athletes, as parents of athletes, are out there asking the community to help us support the team. So then I find immense pleasure in then seeing the student athletes go out and do their food drives, or like the birthday wishes the other night. And a youth night is, I know, a challenge for you to try to wrangle the children, the younger children. But I think it is fantastic to try to build that pipeline and the interest. And again, from my point of view, I was talking to the ticket taker about, do we differentiate in between adult tickets and student tickets? And do we have that data to then look at what would it mean if we let the students in for free? And so I had that conversation the other night. So that's why I posed it to you. Yes, Dr. Silva.
So I just have a question about the numbers in terms of participation, and if you could speak to what the participation has looked like historically, and with the dip that we've seen, COVID, and where it is now and where you'd like it to be.
Yeah, and obviously, just looking at any of the years of participation, post-COVID, there's a significant drop, but we are kind of trending upwards, in sports, basketball, and specifically indoor track, where those non-cut sports, we've seen a considerable increase in regards to participation for those. And then, the sports that are, pretty steady, ice hockey's been pretty steady. Gymnastics has seen a little bit of an increase. But, I think the sports that, I would like to kind of hone in on, specifically in the fall would be, soccer, making sure that those, we have, a freshman JV and varsity team to field. I think that's kind of a priority in that sense there. And then the winter, basketball program, I'd really like to, make sure that we have 3 teams to field, freshman, JV, and varsity for boys and girls. And then your other programs, like wrestling, for instance, they had almost 60 kids this year. And, big props to Coach Camo. He does a great job, and it's a well-run program. And so, those particular sports and, that like wrestling that kind of operate in a silo, so to speak, really, start to see a bit of an increase on students that might have been playing in, a basketball or ice hockey or whatever.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Okay, the next item that we have is the coaches' positions.
all right, hold on, please. I have to clear my annotations. I have to find the next screen. Okay. There we go. This slide?
Yes. So this is what we've done here is we've outlined how many coaches we have. Mr. Wood got this information from the previous athletic director, and then we double-checked it with our records in the payroll and the HR office, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And what I told Dr. Shirachek that I wanted to do is bring this forth so that in upcoming years, if somebody says, I want to, we need to add a coach, we know that this is what the school committee, so kind of like the student activities, like this, we've already voted now, this is what our baseline is. So as you can see, I have put in the winter sport, I do have 3 items that are yellowed, and those are the 3 that we're coming forward with. So this is what we think we have, is the 22 does include those 3 that we're hoping that will be getting voted forth this evening. If those do not move forward, then we would change this to drop those off and reduce the numbers. But we do believe that, that we have 30 coaches, that would count for coaches and assistant coaches total in the fall season. And then we have 22 in the winter, we have 20 in the spring, and then we have 1 during the summer for strength and conditioning. So I wanted to give this information, and I wanted to make sure that what Mr. Wood got from the previous director and what we had in our HR and our payroll offices all agree, and I'm going to say that that was a wonderful thing to find that we all agreed. Last year in the spring, we did not have a head coach on Ultimate Frisbee because we did not have a Frisbee team because of we didn't have participants. And so that's what I'm going to say here. So what actually came up is when they came forth with the assistant girls basketball, I said, oh, have we had one? And then we actually looked back as far as we could. So at one time, we probably did have a freshman girls basketball, but in the last 5-6 years that we looked back, we couldn't find it. So I said, let's start here. Now, if next year they have enough girls participants and that they want to add a freshman group, Mr. Thomas and Mr. Wood would have to say, okay, the assistant that possibly gets voted on tonight, could that be the freshman one, or would we need another one? If we need another one, then they're going to come to the Director of Finance and Operations and ask to bring that to the school committee.
She's the sheriff.
So I am trying to make sure that I have everything tidied before I am retiring this July, so making sure that everything is tidied.
We haven't announced that yet. I'm going to continue to not announce it in hopes that it doesn't happen. That's a compliment, so.
Okay, well, thank you. So this information is, so once we move on to the next item where we're going to be voting, then this would be accurate. If we decide that we're not going to vote for those 3, or not going to approve those 3 positions, then this document would have to be approved, and Mr. Wood and I would work on that.
Okay, so I'm scrolling to the next slide.
Yes, so, so this is what I had brought forward last time, but forgot to put the little asterisk for a voting item. The athletic department is requesting 3 additional winter sport coaches, an assistant coach for boys basketball, an assistant coach for the girls basketball, an assistant coach for the indoor track. And then the cost associated with these coaches would be $7,036. And I know that number only because of, that we really have already hired somebody. So that's, we have put the cart before the horse on this one. And I've talked to Ms. Visnick about that, the fact that, but what happened was the positions were posted, positions were filled. Quite honestly, Mr. Keefe did have them on his presentation before, but he didn't go through the proper channels of asking first of all, the principal, and then having the principal and the athletic director come here. So, so therefore, I did ask Mr. Wood and Mr. Thomas to give us some justification, which I have on this next page. And I'm talking about, so, that it's it's the only winter sport that does not have a paid assistant, coach. The coach is utilized for all three levels, and the current boys' basketball, was 37. I'm not sure if that number changed, but when we were first started talking about it at the beginning of the season. And then the assistant, girls' basketball, same thing. And then the assistant, B and G track, last year we had one person, the person got ill, and then we brought somebody on that shared it with them, and then they just both got hired. So we're looking to add these three coaches, and I'll let the gentleman do any discussion if you have any questions.
Dr. Silva, did I see your hand?
Yes, thank you. So I'm looking at the coaches, and I have a couple questions. So for a sport at the high school, if there's going to be a varsity and a JV level, how many coaches would you recommend for that scenario?
For varsity and JV level,
How many total coaches?
well, it's good, obviously vary on the sport. I think with the numbers that we have for basketball, I think justifying a head, an assistant, and then whether it's a sub-varsity, JV, or freshman coach, I think would be appropriate.
And so I'm looking at football. Does that typically have varsity, JV, and freshman, or is it typically just varsity and JV?
They're not categorized as such as a freshman or JV coach, but within those particular assistant coaches, there'll be one JV coach who'll be the JV head coach, so to speak, and a head freshman coach.
Okay, so because I'm looking at football, and I'm looking at some of the other sports like lacrosse, where there's typically a JV and a varsity sport, and seeing that there's only two coaches there, where a third coach would be helpful to be able to actually support a JV team when a varsity team is also in play, and typically there are those two teams playing, so I think that's understaffed, and I just making the comment that I think that you'll need to look at some of these sports and just look at the field, look at the student, look at the kids on the field, that whether they're getting coached appropriately with the staff that can train them, and if they're not, to maybe rethink some of the distribution of coaches across the different sports.
Yeah, I agree in that sense. Like I said, I'm just referencing the winter coaches, but for sure there are some sports that could definitely use extra supervision, extra support in those regards, and lacrosse would be on that list for sure.
I'm looking to see if anybody else has a question before yes, Mr. Manzo.
Well, I think it's great that you want to provide the student athletes as much support as possible, make sure that they have a good experience and they stay safe. And so I have no problem with adding these positions, assuming that the budget can sustain them. I did have one question about the parity between the boys and girls basketball. Are there any issues with having more coaches for boys basketball than girls basketball? I'm thinking Title IX, or just any sense of fairness. Is that an issue we have to consider, or we're good?
From our end, we definitely look at it from an equity standpoint and want to make sure both groups are getting treated with equity, and this would include that, because we'd be making it, assuming going down the road, we'd have a freshman girls team, you'd have a coach at every level, then an assistant for each, so 4 total coaches for each program.
But this doesn't do that today, though. This creates an imbalance between the two groups, right? If I'm counting correctly? You have 4 boys coaches?
We have an imbalance, though. Because we don't have enough girls playing, which
Yep.
goes to Mr. Ryan's first point.
Participation is less.
Yep. Yep.
We don't have enough girls to field a freshman team.
Okay.
So if you say, all right, well, we just don't have a freshman team, I'm still equitable in the sense of if
Okay.
I have an assistant coach to my head coach for the varsity team, regardless of whether you have enough participation to have all 3 levels or not.
So there's no real equity issue. The issue is that there's not enough students to field a third team at this
Correct.
point.
Correct, yep.
So we wouldn't get, and there's no issues involved.
The same was true for soccer, right? Girls soccer.
Girls soccer, yep.
Failed to have a freshman team this
Correct,
year.
yep.
As well as, I think, last year.
I think even longer than that, to be honest.
Yeah.
But but soccer has the same number of coaches, boys and girls.
They
Yeah.
would if they had a freshman team.
Okay. But on your spreadsheet there, you've got the same number. You have 4
Oh,
4 soccer coaches on each,
no freshman
for
boys.
each boys and girls, so.
There was no freshman boys this year. That was
Okay.
my mistake, yeah.
So I just want to make sure we do what's right for all the students.
And the one thing I just want to add too is that these are positions, so if they don't have the participation, they may not fill a position, but
Okay.
So
Any-
with that comment, if the numbers aren't there to fill that position, can a position be opened in like a spring sport to provide that position that might be needed if the numbers are there?
So I think that they would always have the ability to come forward and request a position. What the scenario you're painting would allow them to say, well, we have some funding available because we didn't
Right.
do that, but it would still be that they would come and it would have to be approved by the committee.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be an automatic, like, oh, I didn't fill this, so I'm going to use it here. It would still go through that same process, but when, as you look at the slide before this, Jean identified what the cost of that would be, they would be able to justify when they came that, well, by the way, we have funding source for that, so it would be one less thing to worry about in terms of that approval process, if that makes any sense.
All right, so now I'm going to call on myself. I think what I have asked for in the past with previous principals and athletic directors, and what I would like to ask of you guys, clearly not tonight, is a breakdown of the ratio. Okay, so football has however many coaches because they have however many students, and we've heard previously that similar to lacrosse, okay, it's a violent sport. Sorry if that upsets people. It's a contact sport. That's a better word. Whenever you can hit somebody else with a stick, I think that's pretty violent. But it's a contact sport, and therefore we need, like from a student to coach ratio, we maybe need a little more. I think if we look at how many people run track, how many boys and girls, how many athletes run track, we see that the ratio is crazy, the number of participants to the number of coaches. So for me, it's kind of hard to look at this and say, okay, I should justify spending money on an assistant coach when the ratio, it's an indoor sport, everybody's self-contained, and maybe traditionally that JV coach becomes the assistant during game time, or right. So adding positions, right? We don't have a money tree in the backyard, and I'm a basketball nerd myself. These people did this job this year. I absolutely think they should get paid. I have to support this. But I do wonder moving forward if we could see something around the ratios and the like a more tangible justification for, why can one coach not handle his or her own team? And therefore needs an assistant above and beyond the JV or the freshman coaches who, during the games, sit on the bench as assistant coaches. So that's feedback, and maybe in a future presentation, we could see some data around that. And I, again, I personally look at it from an equity point of view, because we have some sports that have so many participants with so few eyes on those participants. How do I, quote unquote, justify voting to spend more money on a really low ratio? So that's my comment. That's not a question at all. I'm looking around the table. Yes, Dr. Silva.
I'm just going to make one more comment. I look at this list and I do see that I know that lacrosse has struggled with the lack of an additional coach. And looking at how many coaches are designated for football, I think there's a huge disparity, knowing that this other very physical sport could use an extra coach. I think that's something you should think about, and I would just encourage you to go to those games, and you'll figure out why another coach is needed.
I'm going to pile on to that. Historically, I am a huge fan of football. I love to watch football. And what I'll say is that in both football and in soccer previously, we very much felt strongly that the booster teams were paying coaches, and that's not allowed. Yeah. And so there was an effort some number of years ago to bring some quote unquote volunteer coaches into the paid coaching ranks, so that we were doing the right thing. And that probably was the last time we had a presentation that was not these two people that talked about here's our ratios and here's what's happening and here's how we break the children up into different groups and why we need more sets of eyes, because this group is over on what I will call the softball field, while some other group is over here and some other group is over there. So we had a presentation on that a while ago, and this is pretty much, well, you were probably here for that presentation. I was here for that presentation, but nobody else at this table was. Mm-hmm. So that's why I basically just asked for that presentation. Oh, yes. Oh, you were too. Sorry. Well, Jean was too. I just mean, okay, from my committee side of the table. All right. Does anybody else have any more questions? Oh, we have to vote. Okay.
Yes, you have to vote.
I just have one more thing. So in addition to doing what Lorinda's asked about the ratios and stuff, I don't know if there are guidelines, either through MIAA or other athletic associations that would answer Lorinda's questions. That is, if you have X many lacrosse players or X many levels, how many coaches do you need? And so whether there are guidelines or even just information from other communities, other high schools that might help Lorinda come to some sort of answer to her question of how many should we have? Because I think that's what you're trying to get to. And so when you get to that analysis, if you could look around as well. Thank you.
Okay, so that said, we have at least two positions that have been filled all year long that have not come before us previously, and we have one that indoor track is also a winter sport, right? So we have three positions that have been filled. These people have been doing the job all winter, so the request is that we approve adding them as positions at a cost of $7,036, and that money will come out of the athletic revolving account.
Yes.
And before I ask for a motion, I'm going to ask you ahead of time, Ms. Sherburne, do we believe the athletic revolving account has that money?
I know it does.
This is why you cannot retire, just so you know. Okay, so that said, I'm looking for a motion to approve these three positions.
Motion?
Thank you, Dr. Silva.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Any further questions or discussions on this particular topic? My question will be, in essence, can we revisit this when we get this next presentation? Maybe that should happen early on in the next school year to really look at it and to set our athletic budget, which actually we're going to do very soon. So I'm
Did
not sure
you-
what that timing what best timing, that's bad English. What would be the best timing for trying to give these gentlemen time to produce the data that we just asked for?
My one suggestion
Yes.
would be, it would be nice for Mr. Wood to have a full cycle of a full year of all three sports, so that he has, because I think a lot of the questions involve, the ability to see how the season, progresses. I think it would be helpful. I mean, we can bring some data, but it would be someone else's data. So my suggestion would just be that the beginning of, maybe this beginning of the fall, winter season next year, something where he's had an ability to kind of get through. If that's, I'm just saying, I think that would be one thing to keep in mind, because I do think it's a new role, and every, to cycle through each season and have a better, understanding of some of that. Because I think we brought some great questions to the table, particularly, around, and I remember the conversation, I picture us in Memorial, I think we were at having that conversation, but there is a lot of questions around different sports and what are needed and what supports, and, and so the opportunity to kind of observe and come back and say, what, here's one thing we saw, we'd like to think about this, and get through a cycle, that's all.
Okay, Dr. Silva, I saw your hand.
I think the feedback also from the head coaches would be
Yeah.
very useful.
Okay, so motion on the table. All those in favor? That passes 5-0. Okay, Ms. Sherburne, do you want me to roll through the rest of your administrative update here? Are there any
Yes, we
more?
can say goodnight to Mr. Wood and Mr. Thomas. They don't have to stay for the rest of it, but they're more than welcome to stay.
Yeah.
You're more than welcome to stay.
You could run away. You're free to go.
So the next item we have on here is the discussion of snow removal at the bus stops. So the question came into me on, that I believe this was something that was discussed maybe on the city council side, talking about it, and then I wanted to get some information from the school side on what we know. So what I gathered for information is that we have approximately 90 bus stops here in Beverly, and they're stopped at each level. However, if we have somebody, no students to pick up at a certain level, like the middle school, then it's on there as a stop, but it's when they look at their bus route, they don't need to stop because there's no students in the vicinity. We haven't made any significant changes to the bus stops over the years. The transportation director receives very few calls from drivers and parents on obstructed bus stops due to snow. The superintendent and the transportation director does inform the Department of Public Services, the DPS, of any complaints. So a lot of times, if a parent is complaining, they're either going to Dana to complain, or they're going to the superintendent. And when I talked to Dr. Shirocek, we were talking about, she said, yeah, she's had a few that she's had to call Mr. Collins on. And I did talk to Dana today that if there's any bus stops added, would he be informing the DPS? Because, as you know, we have outside snow removal people, and this isn't a school thing, because we are responsible for removing the snow on our school property. The city is responsible for removing the snow on sidewalks and/or streets. We saw that complaints that had, or what was raised, is that sometimes the outside vendors plow the snow onto the sidewalk, where then that's where the students need to stand. So Ms. Visnick and I were talking about it, that we heard it from other sources asking those questions, so we thought we'd bring it up here.
Right, so, Ms. Spanks, if you'll hold your question for a minute. So I think a good summary is that when our streets get plowed, especially when they get plowed well, the snow from that plowing of the street goes onto especially the corners, the intersections. Sometimes it goes into the sidewalk. My biggest concern are those corners, and the corners that are bus stops. And if you are a resident and you're trying to even clear your own sidewalk, and now you're on a corner lot, and the street plows, which is a third-party entity most likely, really fill your corner with all of the intersection snow, and then we expect our children to stand there. So then our children don't stand there, they stand in the street instead. And so I had a conversation with Mr. Collins about this, and about, there are a number, Mr. Collins maintains a list of addresses that he knows needs some kind of special treatment, some for whatever reason. And so what I was talking to Jean about was the fact that this list exists and that maybe we would want to be more proactive, especially given complaints, to say next year, we know, and I'm going to use my neighborhood, which I try not to use. I try not to ever use myself as an example, but Grover Street is a very thin street, and we have several bus stops on Grover Street. And then once the plows come through, it's even thinner, and now the children are standing in the street because they can't stand on a corner because the corners have the big piles of snow. So if we wanted to be proactive and look at that and say, okay, Mr. Collins, to your special list, please add these, I'm going to make up a number, 10 bus stops. These 10 bus stops are in a location where the street plowing really impedes our ability to keep our students safe. And or to keep the neighbors who are driving on the roads not incredibly grumpy because the children are standing in the street instead of standing on the corner. So this was the beginning of this conversation. I did go speak with City Council Public Services, maybe, Mr. Rotunda? Was that, Hannah leads it? Yes. Okay, Ms. Bowen. And so we had this conversation. I talked with Mr. Collins about it. Knock on wood. I really don't want to jinx you because we're near the end of February.
Everybody,
we
please.
haven't had a whole lot of snow, but there have been years that we've had more snow. So just something for us to think about and whether we want to try to be more proactive relative to student safety, student bus riding safety. Did you want to say something because Ms. Spanks had her hand up?
Nope,
Okay. I thought you put your hand up.
nope.
You were tricking me. Okay.
With this last,
Did you put your microphone on? You have to push your button.
with this last storm that we had, I was driving around noticing exactly what you mentioned. Children were in the streets, they were on top of the snow piles. So my first reaction was to contact the city. And I did contact the city, but they really couldn't tell me a whole lot. I forget the name of the counselor in my ward that I spoke with. So are there proactive steps with the school district reaching out to the city to talk about ways? I know it's tough on the mornings. If it's a 2-hour delay, this particular storm, there was a 2-hour delay, so it could be a challenge to remove snow off sidewalks with the city during that time frame. So I'm just wondering, has the city been contacted with any suggestions on what they can do if there's a 2-hour delay, or even if the school day is canceled and they need to clear sidewalks and things so that the next school day, kids have a place to stand?
After
So
you.
now I have my hand up. No, thank you. And, so first of all, the whole process of snow in general, please understand that the school department, myself, Mr. Collins, Mr. Cruikshank, Mr. Shiroli, we're all on the phone for 12 hours prior to a snowstorm. So from 8 o'clock at night to 2 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the morning. And when we call a delay, what the goal is to make sure that streets are passable, that the schools are passable, and that we can clear. We communicate very closely with Mr. Collins around can we open, what will be open, and, often the question is, will the sidewalks be cleared? Sometimes he'll say, well, no, but that's on the list. We'll get to them during the school day. So for the 2-hour delay, that was the conversation. There's no way they're going to have every sidewalk, every school bus stop cleared, but we will have, the sidewalks will be cleared and the schools areas will be cleared, and we will work on those throughout the day, during the day when students are in school, because the timing of the storm is usually the biggest problem. The 2-hour delay, in particular, the snow didn't stop falling until 9 o'clock. And so it was challenging to try to do that. We are in communication with him. I just want to clarify, when Jean referenced that the director and myself receive a few calls. That's over a course of a few years. We do not really receive that many calls. I don't receive that many calls, but when I do, that's exactly what I do is I'll call and I'll say, I'm hearing that, the intersection at Mill and whatever is very high, and I'm not, Betford, yep, is very high, and he'll say, all right, I'll send a crew there first to make sure, and I'll say, I have, 45 children at that bus stop. It's a really important bus stop for you to get to. And so we work very closely, and he's very responsive to us. And,
Absolutely.
and the other piece of the puzzle is that Beverly is by far the most well-cleared snow district around, and it's very helpful to us to be able to get our kids to school. So they do a good job, but that's exactly what we do. So again, knowing and noting where there are particular stops that we have concerns about, I let him know about that, and he puts them in a different order on the list or something like that. So that communication is in place.
Right, so maybe what I want to ask of my fellow committee members is to think about your neighborhoods and where, like I said, my neighborhood, it's Grover Street, just because by definition, it's windy, it's thin, and it doesn't even have sidewalks for a good portion of it. So that just adds to that problem, and that we could be a little bit more proactive, and that we could give him some bus stops ahead of time in the 45 children at
Right,
that stop,
right.
or a bad traffic in another area.
Correct.
And say, when you go out to, it's currently Iron Tree, we need them to be more
Focus on-
attentive.
focus
Put
on-
the snow
yeah.
somewhere else than the corner at this particular intersection, Mr. Truck Driver of Iron Tree. Hold on one second. I just want to say, though, too, that this clearing of the sidewalks, the city is not responsible to clear the sidewalks of the residences, or the businesses. That is actually on the business owner and on the city, on you as a homeowner, right? So we have a city ordinance that says you need to clear your sidewalk, and you need to clear it in a certain amount of time. And as far as I can tell, that's never enforced. So that was part of the conversation. How does a child even get to the bus stop safely? A lot of times they're walking in the street because the street has been plowed and the residents haven't done their job of shoveling their sidewalks. So, yes, Ms. Coelho.
I will say part of the problem in my neighborhood, the whole Gloucester Crossing area, not just my street, in my neighborhood, and I've talked to a city councilor about this before, is the city cannot properly plow some of these sidewalks and clear some of these corners if the residents are not taking the snow ban in effect seriously, and if the city is not holding them accountable, because in our neighborhood, the residents will park on the sidewalk in which the snow gets plowed up against their car, then they can't move their car, and the kids are still forced to walk in the street.
That's a lovely thing. All right, so we are at the end of our allotted time, but we still have revenues and expenses to go through. How about I ask you, because I talked so much about sports and snow, do you have any concerns about either the revenues or the expenses? And then I will
Go to the next slide.
Oh no, one more slide. Here we go.
Yep.
Here we go.
Yep, so the revenues, I'm going to just say quickly, the revenues, I don't see any problems with those, anticipating on what's coming in. And as far as expenses are concerned, snow removal, we're at 73% of it being spent. I reported last month that we're always looking at the SP 860 tuition accounts, and we're using circuit breaker funding. I think what I'll do is I'll put that on an item for the next meeting to talk about, the circuit breaker and how much we're in. Right now, we're not as deep in as I thought we were going to have to be, which is a good thing. Long-term substitutes is actually overspent, and Mr. Manzo did ask me about that. How can that happen? And payrolls can push an account into the negative. I then have to fix it. And usually I run a report before the meeting and fix and I didn't get a chance to do that, so you got my raw data here. But we'll be transferring items from salary lines. So in that long term, that is, we have people that are out in a unpaid status sometimes, and so that we'll have some savings in their salary accounts. So next month, I am planning on bringing more transfers or a larger transfer than the one little one that I did this month. As far as the accounts, there's nothing really that I'm looking at right now that I'm concerned about. Pat, is it Patty or Patricia? Patty, if you want to come in sometime and meet with me, I can go over what these reports are so you can understand what it is. So, right, I work in the McEwen Building, so we can schedule sometime if you just want a little brief 101. And actually, we do have a whole presentation that I can tell you about on that. If there's any questions anybody has on these, just send me an email and we'll converse that way. But I don't see anything right now that is alarming me, that if I have a negative somewhere, I know where I'm going to fix it from.
All right, so I'm looking around the table. Does anybody have any burning questions for Ms. Sherburne? Motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo and Ms. Coelho. Non-debatable. All those in favor? That's 5-0 at 7:34.
Testing, testing. Testing. It says there's one more question on the screen.
What's the question? I push yes, I'll push it again.
Okay. Testing. Oh. Oh, were they? Testing, testing. 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 It still says join audio at the bottom. If you hit that little caret up, that little caret. Oh, yep. The little tiny, no, right there.
Yeah, I don't see my settings anymore.
Oh, well, hit settings.
I used to see settings.
Yeah. So there was a choice that said audio settings. Maybe try that. Maybe there's a menu of them.
Mayor, I tried to let David and.
I'm just texting you.
Oh, okay. It's not on our agenda for tonight, so we might.
I don't know why those settings are different. I can't hear you in here if you're talking to me. What were you saying? Before?
Just that it looked like if you click audio settings, you might get some choices.
Yeah, I did that before, couldn't find the choices. All right, let me try again. Like right here, right?
On the right-hand side of test speaker, there should be a list of speakers.
On the right-hand side of the test speaker.
Yeah, so you click audio and it says speaker and microphone.
So go into that?
So click audio here.
I don't know where you mean.
Or down here,
Yeah,
click the caret up,
yeah,
and hit audio settings,
yeah.
brings you to audio. And over here are those the correct choices for microphone and speaker.
It should be the library. So let's see. Right now, it's same as NDI, that's us. That maybe, see if I can. Yeah, I'm not hearing that.
Seven of us, so maybe everybody else could make that.
Oh, well, you're not connected to AirPlay again.
Oh, I'm not?
No.
It says Wednesday because Jeannie makes it, all of our meetings are on Wednesdays. You know what I mean?
See, this is what updates, resets everything, and Ed was with me today. I take an update.
Mixed bag. Sometimes if you don't take them, you don't.
No, but I want to at least share it with Brian, because, I mean, that's coming.
She might be online. If we can get online to work.
Can you read me the numbers on,
6967.
I don't know why down here in the lower left I'm getting that symbol of headphones. I don't know why that's,
Yeah, that's so strange.
that's
Just bear with
different.
us
I've
for
never
one
seen
moment
that
while we
before.
try to troubleshoot.
Well, people can always follow along on our YouTube channel. I'm getting great audio there.
We just have one member that's joined remotely.
Oh, I can put on closed captioning. Let's see. Use separate audio device, play. Yeah. I don't see anything here. Now
Yeah.
this thing isn't. Oh, okay, so at least that's working now.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
What about your microphone? Test your microphone. I'm suspicious that you're not getting any of our.
Well, that I think is this laptop's mic.
Okay.
Well, maybe.
So you should connect it to your NDI audio.
Well, Oh, that's what it is, NDI, that's what it should be.
Yeah.
So, let me try this.
Testing, 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 testing.
No. Oh, boy.
You want me to help something in the chat? You already did, right?
Yeah, I've put a couple in there. I also have just come off mute. We're going to give a couple more minutes to try to troubleshoot the audio so Ms. Robinson can participate.
This happened before, remember?
Yeah, what's odd is it doesn't show you as muted and it shows just a black screen rather than your name, so it thinks you're giving video and audio, but you're
Oh,
not.
I'm wondering if this is thinking it's
I think
my personal, you know what, let me leave the meeting again
Oh.
and try something else. Let me log into something else.
Okay. He was logged in twice.
Something changed here, Jesus. So let me log out of this. Oh no, actually, let me log in as a different thing here. Let's see, I wanted to add another, let me do this.
Jeffrey, have you done the pledge recently? I can't remember. You're happy to? Okay. You're going to be called on. You're closest to the flag. Actually, there's two flags. That's confusing.
Going back in.
Well, not in specific, we're trying to figure out as part of one of our goals, what would we do in that, and his name. That's also.
You'll let me in, please?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm still getting that same.
It says you are connecting to audio, and then it says you did not connect to audio.
That's awesome, that is such great. That's a great breakfast news, that was awesome.
We've been going back and forth on email for a while.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm trying. That's amazing.
You were talking to me.
Was it you? Yeah, we just had I said, we just had that conversation, and we even brought his name up, so.
Julie, I wish I had a picture of your face.
Pick
Julie was
me,
like,
pick me,
"Oh, I
pick
don't
me,
think it was
okay.
me."
I knew we did, and so that's awesome. Yeah, excellent, great news.
Crazy,
Yeah.
coinky, as we always say. In my house. How funny was it that Tad came all the way in here and put the ski equipment on my desk? I was like, just put it in the chair.
Yeah, he was with the hat on.
Put the music back on.
You're not on the library cart, so I can't test. 1911.
Yeah, Rachel, I'm not getting it. It's funny.
Okay, so maybe you just stay off Zoom and just do the normal broadcast, and I'll use my computer for audio.
So I should stay off, yeah, I won't pick up any presentations or anything, but.
That's okay. But I don't think we have much in the way of hard presentations.
Sorry. I'll talk to Ed tomorrow.
Okay. Okay, so what I think we're going to try to do is to use my computer audio. We'll let BevCam broadcast on YouTube. You can watch along. It's going to be a little tiny bit of a lag. And if you do need to participate, you can drop something in the chat here, and I can, I think, pull your volume through on my computer to the microphone somehow. Okay? So we're going to use just my computer audio to work with the folks that are at home, and they can listen on BevCam for all of our, like on the YouTube channel. It's going to be a little bit tricky, especially when we get to the policies. But, oh, is he not here? Okay. We do have quorum. Yeah, we'll get started. BevCam, I trust you're broadcasting us?
I am.
Okay, great. The time is 7:51 p.m. I would like to call to order the Committee of the Whole of the Beverly School Committee. And this is Wednesday, February 28th, 2024. We are using a hybrid remote meeting platform this evening, although the audio is giving us a little bit of trouble. Fortunately, we also have BevCam here, who is streaming us on their YouTube channel and broadcasting us on their channel 99. So thank you, BevCam, and we will endeavor to fix the audio issues for our next meeting. We are allowed to use remote meeting platforms, although a quorum of the members are here tonight, and our remote member has chosen to take the evening off and just watch us. So we will be able to do our votes in person here at the table, but I'll just let everyone at home know, who's watching us on the broadcast, that on June 16th, 2021, the former governor signed Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, and on February 12th, and again on July 16th, 2022, he extended those provisions, which, among other things, allow public bodies to continue to hold meetings remotely until March 31st, 2023. Our now current governor and legislature has extended for a further 2 years this provision, so we are allowed to use remote meeting platforms to provide safe public access until March 31st, 2025. Again, we do have all of the members who will be participating this evening in person, so we do not need to do a roll call vote. And we apologize for those who might want to contribute on our remote platform this evening. We don't have an opportunity for resident speakers anyway, so we'll just make do. Again, for those of you at home, if you're having trouble hearing some of the other members, we can do the mute-unmute shuffle with Dr. Trocek, but you might also want to just watch the YouTube stream of this session. So, as I mentioned, tonight is a committee of the whole. The next opportunity for resident voice will be at our regular school committee meeting on March 13th. If you do supply any audio or video on the remote meeting platform, it potentially could become part of the meeting record, although BevCam's not logged in right now and I'm not recording. Do try to use the mute functionality, however, to prevent background noises. I'm now going to conduct our roll call of who is in attendance. In person, we have Mayor Cahill.
Here.
Kimberly Coelho.
Here.
Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
Lorinda Visnick.
Here.
And I am Rachel Abel. We are also joined by Jean Sherburne.
Here.
Sue Trocek.
Here.
Dot Flaherty. Here. Julie Smith. Here. And Mark Thomas. Here. Remotely, we have Dr. Morgan. And I'll have to turn up my volume. Okay, we see your closed caption here, and I just turned up my volume, so we hear you. We have Ms. Brown. Okay. And we have Ms. Blansky.
Here.
Okay. We're also joined by our educator, Ms. Paguyo. Okay. I think that takes care of the meeting platform and who we have in attendance. I would now like to call on Dr. Silva to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Next on our agenda is the approval of our meeting record from the 24th of January. It was a committee of the whole meeting.
Motion to approve.
It says 2023. That's a Scribner's error. Should be 2024. Move to approve by Ms. Visnick. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Were there any corrections to note for these open session minutes? Okay, all those in favor of approving? I'm seeing 5-0. Thank you. Next, the superintendent's report. And Dr. Churchak, I think the best thing for me to do is to mute my microphone here and my speaker and my mic on my laptop, and you can unmute your.
All right, can you hear me on the?
On the Apple, right? TV?
Yeah, and you'll have to share directly to Apple for us.
Oh, sorry, okay.
You'll have to go on the meeting for that.
Yeah, I can do that, I know how to do that.
To the Zoom meeting for that, right?
Oh.
Or will she have to?
No, I can share and we can,
No, maybe she can just share.
if I share it, the Zoom people will see it, but then nobody here will see it.
Both. You know what, you share it in Zoom, I'll share my, oh, I don't have an Apple.
Oh,
Let's do this, let me share it up there, and you can I can turn my thing and people at home can see it. We're gonna get this right. We are gonna do this.
like the old days, yes.
And it says that the library card is in use.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
That's
am I
all
in?
you- Yeah.
Exercise our auditory learning genes.
Because it's all pictures. The presentation that Mrs. Smith has is all pictures.
We can close our eyes.
No, they're all beautiful pictures of our fabulous students being super awesome.
Try that?
I still see your browser up there.
Oh, I'm still, jeez.
Oh, Rachel, actually, this is already shared with you.
Can you share it now?
I'm sure I can share it with Rachel. Can I share it now?
Can't, Rachel.
To the library card?
That looks like your desktop still though, right?
That's not my desktop.
Dr. Churchill, are you at the wrong table?
What do you mean?
Well, why don't I just shut the machine off?
I don't have any food. Oh, you're not at Rotary.
Next time I show.
Where would you prefer? All right, now I can share it.
That's good.
Okay, I don't know how we got what's on there now, but, oh,
Okay.
it's different from mine. Okay, so I'm off. I
Yeah.
shut the machine off. Can you share now?
I am trying. Yeah, I can. Library card. Now I can.
There you go.
I'm really gonna retire. I'm telling you.
Same code that it just
Missed it
gave.
today. We did a city scene with.
I'm gonna watch that. Now I know I'm interested in that. Oh, good.
Very nice.
All right, so
I didn't see
my
that.
report is up, and then that way everyone can see it. And so I think, if it's all right with you, President Abel, I'm going to switch the order on the agenda and have first Julie Smith come join us to share information about our fabulous February Vacation Academy. You're going first. So I'm going to let you take this. You can scroll yourself through. There you go.
Awesome. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm glad I didn't have to wait any longer to talk about our math vacation academies. We just came off our last, or I should say our first session during the last week's school break. And the positive energy is still reverberating on the staff that they're texting each other, they're missing each other, and we were only together for 4 days. So I have one little slide here, sort of our February Math Academy by the numbers.
Can I stop you for 1 second?
Yeah.
So I just want to make a connection for those people that were at the Finance and Facilities meeting, that $220,000 grant that we received from DESE, that is what funded this entire program. So just as in terms of how it was all funded, has all been funded through the grant. We used some of the money in February, and we have resources, and we will be holding it again in April with that same funding. So I just wanted to clarify.
Yes, awesome. We were able to get students from all 3 levels. We had elementary students. We had elementary students from all 5 schools, and we housed the program at North Beverly. We had a group of students here at the middle school and a group at the high school. It was not difficult to find staff to work this program. Lots of people came forward. We had teachers, paras, we had a nurse, we had a SAC, food service, transportation. So in total, about 35 staff members came together to provide this opportunity for students. We gathered 125 students for the February Academy. So that's just students in 3, 4, 6, and 9. So the grant only allows you to provide the program for grades 3 to 10. And so for the February round, we had provided a program for students in those 4 grade levels. What that amounted to is close to 1,500 hours of additional math instruction for those students. So it was a pretty intensive program. We had, a high, a low teacher-student ratio, so it was very intensive support. We targeted students who sort of were in that partially meeting category, students who needed just a little extra help, students who we knew needed some, more meaningful engagement during the February break, and students who we knew would come and work diligently and take advantage of that time. And so it was a pretty intensive experience for the students who attended. We offered breakfast and lunch. Again, all this grant funded. We served over 500 meals during the week over the 4 days. And at the end, I really can't emphasize enough the positive, collaborative energy that teachers brought to this program. We had said, everybody wants a break. By the time February break rolls around, we're all looking for it, right? We all have that look in our eyes. And these teachers were energized. They were working with a new program. We provided consistent materials. We thought we're taking staff from all 5 schools. We're taking kids from all 5 schools. So we wanted them to have a consistent experience. So we gave them new curriculum that they had to learn and plan and use during that week. And the energy that they took to doing that did not look like typical teachers on a school break. It really was a special week, and they bonded. They loved working together, and it was just nice to see people from all 5 elementary schools bring that level of energy to the work, and then also that just trickled down to the kids. So there was a somber, after the 4 days, I know Friday morning, kids were a little bit sad that it was over. They had met friends, made new friends from different schools, exchanging codes and however they do. But I have to say, kudos to the staff who really made that a great experience for the kids. And at the end of it, I think, this is my 10th year here as a principal, and I have to say this is another example of just how staff in Beverly come out to provide these continuous learning experience for kids. And so I'm thankful and I'm grateful that we're able to do that. And we do that a lot. And this was just another example of that. So I appreciate that. going to just show some pictures. The kids really worked hard, and so hopefully you'll see all their posters with all their math through there. Our third graders, they had a unit that was sort of based on a truffle factory, so they were designing boxes and working on their multiplication and division. And then there was a little break where they actually made some truffles. Our fourth graders, they did a unit on number detectives, just really building their number sense and factoring and multiples and all that. So this was a quote from a third grade student during the week. I feel like I really understand math now. And when you think about that was 20 intensive hours of math instruction. And you think, oh, 4 days of math. The teachers and the kids, I think, were so surprised by how far they had come in such a short amount of time. And the kids were feeling so comfortable and so confident, which is not usually how the kids feel. And these are kids who are usually tend to be quiet in the math class. We're leaders, we're talkers, we're actively engaged in that. Some more pictures. We had some enrichment programs. Everything was math related. So we added some every kid got a break in the day to do some math in a different format. We celebrated at the end of the week with a little awards ceremony and some special challenges just to celebrate what the great week that we had. But on that picture, those are students from all 5 schools. Those are teachers from all 5 schools, and that really was the best part of that. And that's our awards ceremony. We had a paper airplane challenge throughout the week, and students were presented with a trophy. There was a golden paper airplane trophy created for the winning student. Middle school, here's a picture of the students who attended the program here at the middle school. They had a very large space to run around during the week. So you'll see they were doing math everywhere. And here's a quote: "I can't wait to go back and show my teacher how much I have learned." So there's been a lot of chatter, like we cannot wait for April break, and there's a whole different meaning to that, right? There's between February break and we say, oh, I can't wait for April break, but we have a whole new thing to look forward to, and so we'll probably do a similar program, similar numbers for the April Break Academy. Anyone have any questions? Yes.
Visit everybody. So the high school also ran a program. They had a smaller group, but it was a very intensive group, and they worked on preparing for a big test that was happening after vacation. But they also had fun. It's a lot easier when they're little, our littles, to plan some fun activities. But the math teacher at the high school was very creative and designed a whole unit around Dairy Queen, and using math around that. And then one afternoon, they walked up to Dairy Queen and got to have ice cream. She also used the gym, and so she had them out of the classroom and using different spaces throughout the school as well. Yeah. So all 3 levels had a good piece of it. And then one important part is that for any of our students that attended, they get to remove an absence in their any absences that they've had. So anybody who has a chronic absentee issue, they were able to take 4 days if they attended all 4 days of the math camp. And would be remiss if we didn't thank Julie Smith, because Julie was the leadership that we were both at a conference out of town when the grant came out and was due within a 2-day turnaround. So we were working on the phone and on the computer, but Julie took the lead in writing the grant and then finding the curriculum and really running the entire program, finding the staff, doing the training. So we have a lot of gratitude for all of your work, Julie.
Thank you. No, that was a fun project, so very, very successful.
Mayor Cahill.
Wow. Mrs. Smith, thank you. That sounds fantastic. And I know you can't do everything with everybody at one time. Could you talk a little bit about how you selected the grade levels for February and how you selected the students?
Well, that was easy because it was a grant mandated. We could only select those students.
No, I heard
Oh.
you said grades 3 through 10, but you selected grades 3, 4, 6, and 9.
So when we had done an initial feasibility ask before writing the grant, we had asked the building leaders, what do you think you could get for staff to run a program? And initially, the middle school said, look, we're just going to run a program in February, and they weren't going to offer a program in February. They were going to April, I should say. They were only going to offer a larger program in April. We had such a great outpouring of staff, which is, I think,
Amazing.
that we were able to run a small program at the middle school for 6th grade. I think that was just who was interested, and they took with who was interested here and ran with that. They will run a larger program here during the April break. And we will continue to run another elementary. So it'll be the same schools. So we'll run the elementary program at North Beverly. We'll run a program here, a larger program in April at the middle school and at the high school. So, you were looking to see math, so I hope that we see you during the April break because you will see lots of math if you visit.
I'll make a point of it. Can I ask, just as a follow-on, so how were the kids selected, and are some to all of those same kids going to be offered or part of April or a different group?
We started, from my elementary perspective, we said each school should target about 30 kids, 15 kids in 3rd grade, 15 kids in 4th grade, start to make invitations. We looked at kids who, again, those cuspy kids who were really close to meeting benchmarks, kids who are chronically absent, kids who we know just needed some more meaningful engagement during the school break. I will be honest to say that getting the kids signed up, that was probably the hardest part of this whole thing. But I will say that it really needed a personal invitation with each one of our families, and that wasn't always a guarantee. We did have some kids who we thought were coming and did not come, and so we learned from that and said, well, maybe we need to over-invite for April to make sure that we're maximizing the benefit of the opportunity. Because, anybody who went, I think, benefited from that. We just want to make sure that we're getting as many kids to take advantage of that next time around. Yeah, it was great.
Miss Coelho and then Miss Visnick.
Ms. Smith, the kids that you thought were coming that didn't come, do you think they weren't able to come because the parents couldn't provide transportation?
We offered transportation. So transportation and food were provided, so there were really no barriers to doing that. It was a lot of like, oh, I forgot I had this, we had these appointments, so we had a surprise, we had a surprise vacation. It was all sorts of different reasons, but we definitely learned from that and thinking about how to cast that net for the April break. But, we had told all the kids who were there in February, like, you guys have a free ticket to April. And, kids were so excited. They really had a great week. And so we're looking to duplicate that and then expand, probably be able to add a few more kids to that next time around. Some families were like, well, we're traveling in February, but we'll be around in April. So we'll know we'll be able to pick up a few more then.
Thank you, Miss Visnick, then Dr. Silva.
My first question is around how are we going to evaluate both what is the grant mandate, but then what are we looking for in district?
It's a great question because I don't know, we were looking at, could we do a replay of one of our district assessments to calculate the growth for kids who attended all 4 days. If that's a fair, I'm not sure, to be honest with you, other than sort of our feedback from our teachers and staff who could see that, who could sort of see that growth. I'm not sure what the actual measure would be for, calculating.
I think one of the challenges is it's such a short period of time, and so, a pre-assessment and a post-assessment at the end, depending on how the curriculum was structured. I mean, we were hitting standards in math, but we were doing it in a different way, and so I can see the challenge with that. I think that we may be able to have a better assessment of pre-February and post-April for students that attend both. Typically, when we run a Scholars Academy, which we do our Scholars Academies, which are after school, it's a 16 to 18-week process, and we do a pre and a post test, and we have some data to look at. I think attendance is a measure, the fact that kids keep coming back, and the attendance was very strong, we think, for the students that were there. This was the very first time we've done a February vacation, so it was such an unknown, and as Julie said, enlisting families into that, I think if we have funding from DESE next year and can do the same thing, and the word is out that it was a really enriching experience and it was a lot of fun and it wasn't like just going to school for 4 more days, I think we will have a better, opportunity to do that.
Dot wants to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in that I just wanted to add in that we had the biggest numbers at the elementary school, and so it was easier with the smaller groups, but both the middle school and the high school did a pre and post test. So we do have some measurement there, even though it was a short period of time. And then we also will have the teacher be able to supply us with the scores from the algebra test that they took this week after it, which was really the focus of trying to help them be ready for that test.
And will we look at, you said you targeted kids who were on that cusp, MCAS-wise.
Yeah.
So
We'll
clearly
have that
we'll
data
have
when
that,
it
but
comes
that's
in.
further out,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. I have another question, but somebody else wants to pile on, so.
Dr. Silva?
This may be difficult to answer, but given what you experienced with the week-long boot camp or whatever you want to call it.
Vacation Academy.
How did it make you think about possibilities of changing how you might change the way things are happening in the current curriculum? I know it's difficult, but
Well, it is a unique situation, right? I mean, you have 20 hours of unlimited time for teaching math and math only, right? And so the curriculum we chose was were these contextually project-based, not so much project, but they were math units where the standards were baked into a relevant context, which would unfold for the kids. So, for example, there's 10 lessons in these units. They got through that whole unit in that week. In a classroom setting, that would probably stretch out over a month. If you were.
So do you think that maybe having math taught every day could be?
Well, at the elementary school it is, but we're covering a lot. So, we don't have like multiple hours of math. Do I wish we had that sometimes? Sure. I do think the staff who taught this were really energized, I think, after the week, which is, some people, oh my gosh, I can't wait to go back into my classroom. I have a whole new sort of perspective. So I think there's that aspect of change, but I don't know that we could recreate that kind of experience to that intensity when you think about the quality of staff that we had with the small groups of students. It was very intensive and very supportive. And we had our teachers working together. So because they had small groups, many of them co-taught that. And so there was just this, which I think they really loved. I think they really loved teaching that together and bouncing ideas off. The planning was happening on the fly and the adjusting. So that was a really unique scenario, which made it so awesome. Believe me, I would love to have that, but.
Ms. Bisnick?
My second question is around the teachers and how the teachers were selected. I think I heard you say something earlier about they, in essence, opted in. They said, I want to do this. And so, did you have to tell some of them no? Right? And so how was the teacher selection handled?
We did have a large number, we had way more than we needed, and that was for people who wanted to do April and, they would say, I could do April, or I could do February, or I will do both. And so we did prioritize our staff based on people who actually had experience teaching at the grade levels that we were servicing, because we said we only have 4 days. We want to make sure that we have our staff who are really familiar with the standards and the content and some of the misconceptions that students at those grade levels have. And so we were able to staff our February Academy with people who teach 3rd and 4th grade and 6th grade and 9th grade.
And that was a requirement of the grant as well. So the grant prioritized for you, sort of in that selection process. It was all laid out in that you would start with teachers that teach in those content in those grade levels. So there were some stipulations that were related to the grant, as well as sort of the selection as we went through it.
And then we had some staff who said, this was great, I'll do it again in April, who originally said, no, I'll only do it in February. We're like, oh my God, this was an amazing experience. Sign me back up.
Dr. Silva.
So I wonder, like, maybe something like math clubs where there's certain periods where you might have this organized in a math club environment. That you could fold this in throughout the year. I mean, there are math clubs that are available through all the grades. Is that right?
There are some that are, we do have some, I know we have one at the middle school, and I'm pretty sure we have one at the high school too, so I don't know about at the elementary.
Maybe
We
that's
have,
potentially an opportunity to sort of carry this.
yeah. That, I think that's one of the most amazing things about when you have an opportunity like this and you can get sort of an inclination to things of what things could look like,
Yeah.
and how, what are the takeaways that we have from that. And then you also energize the staff and you energize the kids. I think for me, just in the reports that I hear about how everything went, the reports that I'm so excited about are the level of energy and love of math that was developed for students who, remember, we selected because they were, that math was considered to be somewhat of a challenge for them, right? And so they now see themselves as mathematicians and they see the relevance in that work, and that was like the greatest win of all wins. So.
Any other questions? Thank
Thank
you so much.
Thank
you.
Yeah.
All right, and thank
Can I
you
come
again.
back after April?
Yes, you'll be back after April to tell us more pictures. We'll have more. All righty, so I have just, in keeping with the same process as we've always done, I have an update for you on budget. We're in the midst of our budget work, working diligently. As I reported the last time that we were out, we have met with the department heads and building leaders, and we have been looking at enrollments. And so what I'm here tonight, I'll talk to you a little bit about what we've noticed around some of our enrollment adjustments that we might be making, and then just a couple of updates around some of the other obligations that are arising that we're keeping our eye on as we go. As always, district goals, these are our district goal areas, and we keep these in focus when we're doing our budget work. These are the budget priorities that were identified by this group and by stakeholder groups. Again, we work really hard to keep our eye on those priorities, and they drive the decisions that we make as we go through. And so the first thing that I want to share with you are our elementary enrollment adjustments. So this is nothing different than we do regularly. We always come forward and take a look at what are the enrollments at various grade levels. Do we have increases and decreases in certain cohorts as they move through? I will say that in particular this year, as we are diving into our budget, we're working very hard to keep in mind that we have had a lot of resourcing available to us over the past few years. We've had a lot of opportunities to expand staffing in some areas. These enrollment adjustments are made with an eye to the guidelines that you all have held for us throughout the process in terms of class sizes for elementary schools and looking at what we do. So our initial run, and this is our initial run, I want to say that again, this is our first pass through at looking at efficiencies and what we're doing in our schools. We have some adjustments of different cohort sizes at different buildings. So at Ayers, there'll be a reduction in a grade 3 classroom based upon enrollment. At Centerville, it is a grade 1 reduction, but a grade 2 increase. Again, that's a larger class size rolling from grade 1 to grade 2. At this point in time, in grade 3 at Cove, there's a reduction based upon enrollment in class size. Hannah has a reduction in grade 2 and a reduction in grade 4. And then North Beverly has a reduction in grade 3 with an associated increase in grade 4. It's a net 4 FTE reduction at the elementary, just based on enrollments, taking a look at who we have in our classes and what we can do. At middle school, again, some of the reductions that happen in elementary are because there's a large cohort of students that are going up to the middle school. We know that we have 400 fifth graders arriving in September. That will require us to add a fifth grade team, which is an increase of 2 FTEs in grade 5. In conversations with both Mrs. Oliver and taking a look at how some of the scheduling is working and how the cohorts roll out, there is a increase in wellness in order to make sure that we can accommodate all of the staffing that we need for the global apps, as they call them, at the middle school. There is a reduction of an art teacher. That's sort of a swap off. The STEM teacher that says from ESSER, and it's a 0, that's because, as we told you all along, there were a few positions that we had still been funding on ESSER that we had planned on rolling into appropriated. We had added that STEM teacher at the beginning of ESSER. The funding just remained on ESSER, but that STEM teacher, we still need that position to remain. So it's not an FTE increase, but it will be a budgetary increase when Jean and I are just adjusting the budgets for the middle school. There's a reduction in the language-based classroom, just in enrollment. Again, that's one of our self-contained programs, and we look at that enrollment every year. The same with the SSP, that's also a self-contained program, so there's we base that upon enrollment. And there is one increase, additional English language learner teacher that's being requested at the middle school that our enrollments definitely dictate that we would need to be able to efficiently service all of our students with English learning needs at the middle school. So at the middle school, at this point in time, that's a net of a +1 in FTEs. And then at the high school, we have taken a very close look at scheduling and how the schedule is going. These are opportunities for us to take a look at class sizes and make sure that we're maximizing the scheduling of kids. This year, there were some classes that ran relatively short. In other words, there were 15 or 16 kids in a classroom. And so we want to make sure that we're more efficient in our scheduling and taking a look at how we can do that, aiming for those class sizes of 23, 24. At the high school. And so looking at that and consulting with Mr. Thomas and with Ms. Ferrara, who does our scheduling work, we are suggesting a reduction of a math teacher, a 1.0 FTE, a reduction of social studies, 1.0 FTE, a reduction of a wellness teacher, 1.0 FTE. We also have a reduction in ladders. Again, that's a self-contained program that we look at via enrollment. And then finally, there was actually an increase in our Accomplished program. There'll be a larger cohort heading up to the high school, and so there's a need to increase a teacher for the Accomplished program at the high school. So that's a net of 3.0 FTEs. And then in district staffing adjustments, we have a request for an increase for 1 occupational therapist that based upon enrollment and fulfilling the service delivery for students in our buildings right now, as well as, again, that same 0 FTE, the float nurse. The float nurse right now is currently funded half through a DPH grant and half through ESSER, and that's another position that we intend on keeping. That float nurse has been instrumental, particularly when we have absences of a nurse at a building. They do substituting, but we definitely feel like it's a very important piece, and Jody Elder has worked to kind of identify and justify that for us. So that's a total staff I don't know where the 5.5, Jean, do you know where that 5 came from? Oh, that's total in all. So taking a look at the net at each level, as well as the additions. So it's a net of 5, right now, in pass number 1, a net reduction of 5.0 FTEs in our first run as we go through this. I also wanted to report to you, this is something that you watched for the last 3 years. In the past years, when I came forward, I would say, here's some positions that we have staffed at, in different places, all based on ESSER funding. We've been very transparent and very clear that these positions were amazing for us to have. However, the funding will be gone at the end of this school year and does not roll into the next fiscal year. So those positions that will be eliminated as a result of the ESSER funding going away, there's a grade 1 teacher at Ayers, a math interventionist at Ayers, a grade 3 teacher at Centerville, a Cove special education teacher, a Hannah grade 1 teacher, a Hannah special education teacher, a North Beverly special education teacher, a North Beverly interventionist, and a North Beverly, 2 positions North Beverly paraprofessionals. Those were positions that were funded primarily on ESSER. At the middle school, a similar situation. Again, positions that were funded on ESSER, grade 7 math interventionist, paraprofessional, and reading teachers, for total ESSER adjustments of 15.2 FTEs in staffing. And that, these are the positions that I have talked to you all along, that this has been the plan all along. We've stuck to our plan, and so that's the direction that we'll go on that. We have some non-staff obligations, I like to call them. Again, just similarly to last year, we have some tuition increases and some reconstruction increases that come via special education. $400,000 is what we anticipate for tuition and reconstruction increases for students that are already placed out of district. And in addition, throughout the course of this fiscal year, we've had a few more outplacements, and those outplacements total $600,000. Again, we have those are funds that we have offsets that occur in some offsets that occur in circuit breaker, and that will all flush out as we go. But we do anticipate an increase of special education costs of about $1 million. Oh, Bethany's online, but of about $1 million this year. And then the third line is the technology sustainability increases. And I know that we laid out for you last year in our budget conversation. We have been utilizing ESSER funding for a number of our device purchases and/or our curriculum licensing. We purchased a great deal of high-quality curriculum throughout the course of ESSER. Some of those licenses are going to begin to roll up and be renewable. That's one of the challenges with curriculum, different than in the past when you'd buy a book and you'd have the book for 20 years. That's not how curriculum works right now. Though I want to be clear that 170 is our plan over 3 years to increase our technology lines so that we're meeting the full, we're utilizing some other funding sources still, and we are able to do that. But the 170 is the amount of increase that we would be anticipating this year in FY25 in order to begin that plan so that we're at a place where we're fully funding what we need to fund through the budget process.
For the first 2 items, last year, was there an increase? And what was that number last year?
Well, 775 for the tuition and reconstruction increases last year. Okay. And our outplacement, I don't have that right off the top of my head, and Bethany's not here, but that number is for placement of students that have gone out of district during the course of this year, and what we anticipate we'll have to pay next year. Again, understanding that particularly our out-of-district placement students, there's a formula of reimbursement at some level through circuit breaker. So there are some circuit breaker offsets that come in at, but the first year that someone's out, those circuit breaker offsets come in arrears the second year. So that's sometimes a challenge. Just to kind of give summary, and again, I just wanted to kind of, like to continue this conversation with you each time we have a committee of the whole meeting so that I'm not catching anyone off guard when we go forward. This is just a reminder, our FY24 appropriated budget was $72,653,940. 85% of that budget is salaries and benefits, $61,605,686. We do have contractual obligations. Steps and lanes this year are listed up here. Steps will be $695,320. Lanes are $455. Healthcare, the number that we have up there estimates a 5% increase. That's where we were the last time we checked. Our next steps, and I have a slide talking about it, will be our meeting with the mayor and Bryant to kind of confirm where are we? Are we looking 4%? Are we looking 6%? But making sure that we have that accounted for. And that does not include the contract negotiations that we're entering into, and we know, but just for a round number for a school committee to kind of be able to keep in your head, 1% COLA right now for our teachers is $468,530, teachers and paras that we're currently entering into negotiations. A 1% increase would be $468,534. Rachel.
Dr. Silva.
For the 5% healthcare increase estimate? Is there any chance that this might be more than the 5%?
Well, we did meet with Brian early in the process, and he was very comfortable with 5%. We're comfortable with that right now in our conversations with him, and you know, we've had that. We do have reach out and make sure that we're thinking about that. So in general, it's always a good place to start. And we did, when we had our conversations, he was like,
So,
for
but
sure.
in terms of the conversations that are happening with the insurance companies, I'm just wondering.
He hasn't met with our healthcare consultant yet,
Right, no,
so that's still to come.
yeah.
Okay.
This is just based upon our.
He has not yet met with our healthcare consultant, so that must still happen. Thank you.
All right. Again, just a reminder about the legislative process. This was a kind of a big blow that we all, at least I felt it was a big blow. We received the initial governor's proposed budget for Chapter 70 for Beverly at $14,678,461. That's an incremental increase of $133,980. Just to be clear, in the past 2 years, our incremental increases have been far more significant. In FY23, it was in excess of $3 million, and last year it was $1.4 million. And so this increase of 133 was disappointing for all of us. We were all hoping for a little bit more. A number of factors that have figured into that is in part the actual formula that is used in determining some of that. The main thing is the inflationary rate that it was figured upon. In FY23, they used 4.5, which is the ceiling that they can based upon statute. In FY24, they used 4.5, which is the ceiling that they can use, when in actuality, the increases were 9.8 and 8.7. And then this year, they came in with 1.5 inflationary factor. Apparently, that's what inflation is right now. No, I'm only kidding. But that's the factor. So that is really what hurt Beverly. We would have seen a far more increase, I think, with different numbers. And so instead of being a district that was getting an incremental increase based upon our demographics of what was upward of $500 per student, we're getting $30 per student this year. And that's just what it is, so.
I don't want to create more work for Ms. Sherburne, especially as she's trying to tie up loose ends, but I do wonder and worry with the transition to free lunch and breakfast for all, that we may not be capturing all of our demographic quite as clearly.
So we only dropped 0.3 points. So
okay,
a
so it's
0.3
not a
percentage.
big factor.
We were
Okay.
32.2 in FY24, and we were 31.9 in FY25. I mean, you know, our numbers, we did not see a substantial. I do believe that, you know, we do outreach where we can, but historically, we have not increased our numbers even based upon that outreach. But, you know, we do continue to kind of hope to do that when we can.
Okay, so it's not a demographic shift or reporting shift or anything like that.
It's just there
formula.
was because we dipped below 32%. So at 32, anything over 32%, and so I would actually look at it as we had a gain last year rather than a loss this year, if you think about it, because we dipped over 32%, which was an unusually large year for us. And you're categorized in groups. So we were putting group 7, and group 7 has an incremental factor of a certain dollar amount. This year, we dipped under, so we were in group 6, which has a lower incremental factor, if that makes sense to everybody. So it impacts not only that we were 0.3% lower, but every single student that we have that is economically disadvantaged, we lost a percentage of the funding that we were getting the year before. Or, as I like to think about it, we had gained some in the previous year, and we went back to where we had originally been.
Originally, okay.
The remainder of, again, this is the legislative process. We're now waiting on the House Ways and Means budget and the Senate budget. I'm not anticipating, I don't know if the mayor has any more information about what we might be able to anticipate about a shift from the governor's budget. Sometimes it ticks up a little when it gets to the House Ways and Means. But last year, I don't know if the override is the right word, the Senate changed it from $30, a minimum aid district got $60 per student instead of $30 per student. So that would be helpful if they did that. Beverly would benefit somewhat if that were to happen.
Mayor Cahill.
I think what I know is that we're all going to ask the representative and senator these questions next Monday. But I should also add that, and I think for the most part, I think everybody knows this, the governor's proposal on the municipal side for local aid, the unrestricted general governmental aid, is about a 200,000 proposed increase. So, that's what we got. Those two numbers, Chapter 70 and UGA. I don't know what kind of feeling to have about what the House and Senate will do differently. I think the challenge is looking month to month on state revenues. I'm not sure we're seeing improvement since the governor proposed her numbers. That's probably the challenge we're all facing.
And so next steps is a more formal collaboration with the city as we sit down and look and to talk about our city contribution. I will say this was only the first pass. This was not, we looked just closely at guidelines. We already have a list of other items that we might be able to create efficiencies around, and taking a look at that. We want to make sure that but one of the things we're all committed to is, a level serviced budget that meets the needs of our students. And so that's what we're all working to. That's what our conversations are always about. And hoping that we can, move forward. So the next time I come, we'll have more information for you on that.
Thank you for that overview. Ms. Visnick.
Next time you come and you bring more information, could you maybe address why, when we have our district math scores continuing to trend downward, there were several math interventionists, easy for me to say, on the list to lose?
So there's not right now, those positions, and I was very clear, and I've had the same conversation, and, I was very clear every time I met with principals. I think Mark and Julie can attest to it, that we have ESSER funding. We're not going to not use ESSER funding when we have it. We're going to create positions that are helpful and that we can have. But when that ESSER funding is not here, that money is not, it's an extra, and that we're going to only be able to use that money as long as we can use it, and when that money's gone, those positions will go. And so for the majority of those, and the only other one is at the high school, and that's an enrollment. That was an enrollment decision around the math teacher at the high school. So again, I've been transparent with all of you that I had put some positions on ESSER, but I did it really very clearly with the idea that when the ESSER money was to go, those positions would go as well. And that, we've been preparing for that all along. So the buildings are all aware that that's going to happen, and we're taking advantage of it while we have it, because we have it, and that's a great thing. But when the money goes, then those positions go.
And I apologize, because I certainly didn't mean to imply that you hadn't been telling us that all along. However, I guess it's, regardless of how much I quote unquote know that, it's still surprising to me to see that we wouldn't take one of those positions and make it a 0 instead of a -1, given the state of our math scores across our district. Right? That we wouldn't say, okay, we now need to add a math interventionist. They need to come off of, well, we already have them, but they were being funded by ESSER, and now we have to find a way to retain that person, because this is, right? I mean.
So that's not to say that the focus of the buildings doesn't remain in math, and the focus of a lot of our goals that we make for a district, and that we aren't looking at ways and what we need, what our needs are, and what other opportunities might arise. For example, the math academies that we just held. So that doesn't mean that we're not looking for ways to boost and buoy the work we do around math, but that doesn't necessarily always mean a position, right? Focus on that doesn't always mean a person or a position. Sometimes it's just shifting and changing and strengthening in other ways. So I think that's one of our focuses.
I don't know if the chair directs comments, but I think, the fiscal cliff that we've been warned about is here. And not only are we losing funding, but the cost of everything is increasing as well. And so we've got a gap between our wants and needs and what we can afford. So
I will say, I don't think I sat across from a single principal who didn't say, can I just keep a couple of them? Because it's a hard thing to do. And I said, I had to be like, remember, I told you all along that this was going to happen. And so, again, we're looking at everything and doing our very best to kind of keep balance. But, and same thing I said about the Chapter 70 money. I think we've been fortunate to have the money that we've had. I truly, I'm so proud of the work that our administrators have done, utilizing those resources really well, and hopefully we haven't, Jean and I have worked really hard to avoid a true cliff where 59 people have to be, we have to be thinking about. So I think the work that was done in Beverly, and particularly with Jean and the principals, that they kept their eye on the prize, and we were able to kind of do it the best that we can. So I feel good about that.
okay. Mayor Cahill.
Thanks, Madam President. So mindful that the proposed state aid numbers to Beverly, based on the size of our budget, really don't have much of any impact in the positive direction, and mindful of the numbers we've all looked at with the fiscal, financial forecasting process. I think that's what you were just saying, and so I appreciate the walkthrough you just gave us, all being based on enrollment and need.
Yeah.
Because that's, I think, ideally, we don't have to go deeper than that, but that's, I appreciate that. Can I ask you, because it does go back to the ESSER piece, you ran through all the remaining ESSER staffing positions, and they're all going away except one that's fully ESSER funded presently and one that's part ESSER and part grant, right?
Yep, and
Just to-
there are no, to be truly transparent, we have two positions that were 0.5. And one is the program manager for City Connects.
Right.
So the other half of that salary is going to be absorbed into the appropriated. And then we had a couple of positions that we were able to utilize Title I funding. And so they're not in either the appropriated or ESSER anymore. They're in Title I, and we moved them to Title I. And so an example of that is the Director of Restorative Practices at the middle school, right?
And you think that the Title I is consistent and will be there?
We
going forward,
believe
right?
that it has been for the last 10 years, right, Dr. Flaherty? And I don't anticipate, or no one's given us any warnings that we should worry that it's not going to be there and consistent. So that was a decision, that some of the decisions that we made as we sort of, as Jean, with her pencil, moves
Right.
things and helps
So-
us try to figure out
so
the
I
best
guess
way to do that.
The point of me asking about the two currently ESSER that you're showing as moving over to operating budget is, I understand they already exist, so we're not adding people, but
Correct.
they have the effect of being an added position to the operating budget as we're building the budget.
Correct.
And
Yep.
that would be two positions.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Only two directly to the appropriated, correct?
Correct,
Yes,
yep. Okay.
sorry. Actually, 2.5.
What?
2.5, because the City Connects one is going into appropriated. The other's
And
going
we all
into Title
talked
I.
about that last year budget
Yep.
time, going half
Yep.
in this
Yep.
current year.
We
and
did the
half in
same
again.
with the Director of Operations and, the Director of Opportunity and Access and the Director of ELL. So we did those sort of in that incremental way.
Gotcha, thanks.
Thank you. Are there any more questions?
All right.
We lost our remote participants. I don't think the audio quality was quite there to keep everyone online, but I will keep the Zoom open in case any members of the public try to join the open portion of our meeting. I'm watching that. We have some policy work to do, and I wanted to first remind the committee that the Curriculum Instruction and Student Life had brought forward for a first reading at the end of our last term a few policies, and we had asked that the clean versions of those, the track changes, was a little hard to follow because it was showing the opposite of what it was intending to show. And so we have sort of three groupings this evening of policies. Two are for the second reading, at which time we can vote to adopt the versions as they are shown. And then we have a grouping for a first reading, which we will have another opportunity to look at a future meeting. For these CISL recommended policies, they are listed under School Committee Chair Updates, Policy Review 1, and then they're lettered A, B, C, and D. D is actually a recommendation to remove. And so we can look at each of these individually and decide if we're ready to vote this new version of the policy. The track changes version is available on the Google Drive if you needed to have a refresh on what the changes were. But for all intents and purposes, we were just standardizing on the use of district versus system, school committee instead of just committee. We were looking at pronouns, and we were looking at things such as caregivers in addition to parents in some of the language. And I don't know if, Dr. Flaherty, I don't want to put you on the spot. I think we had general consensus that these were the versions we wanted to move forward. We just wanted a clean version of them for our second reading for the vote. And then the one for removal, i.e. organization of instruction, just to remind you, it's covered in other regulations. And so it's kind of redundant to keep it in a policy for us. So I think the chair would request a motion to approve. We'll do each one individually. G, B, E, C.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. Thank you, Mayor Cahill. I trust that we've had time to look it over. We were all generally agreeable at the first reading. Seeing no questions or concerns, I'll call the vote, hand vote. All those in favor of approving, making this version our new version, 5-0. Thank you. Next, for health education, this is IHAM. Similarly, we just made some of those slight edits. We generally had agreement at the last meeting. This is the clean version. Looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. Thank you, Mayor Cahill. Yes. Sure, it's IHAM, IHAM, the newest Apple product. For Easter, maybe? I don't know. Okay. Tip your servers. Anyway, the health education, are there any comments or concerns with the clean version? All those in favor of making this our new version? 5-0. And just as a reminder, it has to be 2/3 vote at the table, and we are having unanimous so far. There is an exemption procedure that's associated with IHAM, and so this is specifically if a caregiver, parent, or guardian wants to have a student exempted from certain health education. And again, this is generally what we agreed to in the first reading, but this is now the clean version. I'm looking for a motion to approve this version to replace.
Motion?
Thank you, Dr. Silva.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. Are there any concerns on this version? All those in favor? 5-0. And finally, under the curriculum instruction and student life policies, we have, oh, there's actually, oh, I see. Those other two went together and these two go together. Okay, sorry. So this is C, this is IGA, and then again, IGD was folded into it. So we would just have IGA. I don't think we had IGD before, but that's the way MASC has categorized it. This is the curriculum development and adoption, and I'm just getting through it. Oh, this was where we had, instead of the committee, we added the school committee to be consistent. Is there a motion to approve this version?
Motion?
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Visnick?
I have a question.
Yes.
The last paragraph mentions the program of studies at the high school, and that is something that we vote on. However, if we think about last meeting's presentation to say, oh, we're going to change 7th and 8th grade math, and then 9th grade math. The 9th grade math change we would see in the program of studies, but there's no program of studies for our middle school. So I'm wondering how this policy kind of maps onto what we're thinking about for the changes for the math program. And specifically, would the proposed math changes in grades 7 and 8 come to us for a vote?
Yes, in the fourth paragraph, the school committee itself will consider and officially adopt new programs and courses of study as they constitute an extensive alteration in instructional content or approach. And that's why Dr. Trocheck encouraged the committee of the whole be present at the CISL presentation. More conversations will be happening. And, there's a line, the superintendent has authority to approve new programs and course of study after they are thoroughly studied and found to support educational goals. But then there's also, if there's an extensive alteration, it's more of a collaborative, we get a recommendation from the superintendent and entertain that. So, for instance, adding languages, dropping languages, adding a voc tech, things that are substantively changing, the after dark program, things like that really are changing. It's not like if we change the name of Theory of Rock, did that one change? Yeah. Popular music, yeah, something like that. Okay. Hopefully I'm being sufficiently vague, but there's a distinction.
Yeah, I think, there's some other policy that Dr. Silva complained about in FNF land probably a year ago about, this language extensive to say, oh, well, something didn't come to us for a vote because someone deemed it wasn't extensive. I think it was about naming rights, right? What's a big advertisement versus not a big advertisement? And so that language concerns me a little bit. Because it's not objective.
Subjective?
It's not
It's
objective.
not-
Yes,
not-
it is subjective.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. Okay. Are there any other comments or concerns on this one before I call for the vote? All those in favor of adopting this new language? That's 5-0. Okay. And the last one in the packet is IE. Again, this is a policy to remove because it is covered under subsequent regulations. I'm looking for a motion to remove
So
IE.
move.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill.
Second?
Thank you, Dr. Silva. Any concerns? All those in favor of removing IE?
We love it when we can get rid of
5-0.
policies.
Makes it a little simpler. Okay. Those are the ones I intended to cover. Ms. Visnick, are you intending to bring forward the policy subcommittee policies? I have them printed and can.
For the second reading? Sure.
For the second reading.
I'm ready.
Okay, go for it.
All right, so the policy review subcommittee brings forward for a second reading 6 policies. The first one being IMDC, accommodations for religious and ethnic observances. All right, I don't know. Here's how I'm just going to do it. I'm going to bring it forward, ask for a motion, and then if you guys have any questions, I'll attempt to answer the questions. Can that be my motion?
Sure. Ms. Visnick makes a motion to bring forward IMDC as presented in our packet to be replacement
For a second reading.
for second reading.
You're on microphone mute.
Oh, sorry. So
Okay, I'm bringing forward 7, not 6. Is that what you're telling me? Okay.
wait, let me just double check. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6.
We'll try to figure that out, Kim, in a minute, all right? I think I have those as well. All right, but we're on IMDC right now. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns about that lovely?
5. Oh, you need a second. I second. Did I say that?
All right, do I get to call the vote? Or are you calling the vote?
Rock, paper, scissors. No. I can call the vote. So we have the accommodations for religious and ethnic observances, motion to replace our current policy with this clean version from Ms. Visnick, seconded by Ms. Abel. Any more comments? All those
It's
in
not a
favor?
replace, it's a new, this is a
It's
new policy.
Okay. New. All those in favor? Okay, 5-0.
All right, the policy subcommittee brings forward for a second reading policies B, D, E, and B, D, E, A. And this is our policy relative to our standing committees and having citizen reps. And we were specifically asked to look at the language, whether it's a citizen or a resident. And we were also specifically asked to look at the term. And the policy subcommittee did not change the term, right? So the term limit, I guess, is how I'll say it. So the way that it's written, it says, you serve for a 2-year term, just like we serve for a 2-year term, and you can do 2 such terms. You can be invited to do a second term, or you can ask to do a second term. But then after that, you need to mosey on along. And we do have some members of the public who have been fantastic and who continue to serve. And so we specifically looked at this policy and discussed whether to lift that term limit or extend it. And the policy subcommittee, the discussion landed on the fact that we can suspend any policy we want with a 2/3 vote. So we left the term limit there, and we said if in fact there's someone like Mr. Manzo on FNF that wants to continue to serve, and we want him to continue to serve because there's no new blood yet in the waters, that we could vote to override the term limit with a 2/3 vote. So that's why we left that there, and we did change the language around a citizen to be a resident. That is the gist of the changes in this and the decision-making process for this policy. And so it is my motion that the committee accept BDE, BDEA as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
First? Thank you. Mayor Cahill.
Question, would it make sense to change pronouns where middle of page 1, the superintendent and his/her designee to their designee? Bottom of the second page, president of the school committee, when he/she deems, change to when they deem? I don't know if I've missed one, but those are the ones that I found.
I'm happy to take that as a friendly amendment. I have to find it. Can you tell me the page?
Yeah, the first one again is middle of the first page under voting members of negotiations and mutual concern subcommittee.
Or their designee?
The third bullet, yeah, superintendent and/or. And then the second one is under committee of the whole at the bottom of the second page.
Yep, when they deem.
Deem, and yeah, drop the S.
Do I see any objections to that friendly amendment? Okay. Motion on the table. Any more discussion? I stole the rock and the paper and the scissors back.
Okay.
Vote. All those in favor? There we go.
Thanks.
All right, Ms. Coelho, can you just maybe put on the notes that we have BDE needs, I need to send a new version to the wonderful Miss Donna. The next policy that the policy committee brings forward is recommending we adopt for second reading is BHE, use of electronic messaging by school committee members. So there was some discussion about this policy, the fact that we all use our district email addresses, they get archived automatically. So we don't really need to CC a district person, but it's probably a good habit anyway. So we left in the CC part. No, we took that part out because it says it's no longer necessary because the school committee uses email addresses from the district that are archived and retained. So that's kind of the chatter around this particular one. So I am making a motion that we accept this. This is our second reading for this guy.
I will second that motion. I would say it is a good practice, though, when we have intra-school committee need to communicate about coordinating dates or meeting agenda items, to keep Donna Bergeron or the executive secretary that's assigned to the school committee in copy. Just helps us not to lose track of some of the emails and some of the action items that we want to get onto the agendas. Even though it's not in the policy, it's just a good practice.
All right, any more comments, questions? Motion on the table, voting. All those in favor? 5-0. Okay. The next policy that the policy committee is bringing forward is EHB. This is a new policy as suggested by MASC. Its name is Data and Records Retention. As you look at this policy, I would like to offer up a friendly amendment. At the time that the policy subcommittee voted on this particular policy, this version of this policy, we had not yet brought forward a related policy, GBEE. And so basically, I want this policy to reference GBEE, and it doesn't right now, down at the bottom as a cross-reference. But I would like to offer a friendly amendment that we add that cross-reference.
So you're making a motion with a friendly amendment, and I'll second that?
Thank you, that would be very nice of you.
Okay.
Any comments or questions on this guy?
I would just offer that although this is based in Mass General Law, I think it is helpful for new school committee members to have a policy that's easily referenced, and then they can also see the cross-reference. So I don't think it's duplicative. I think it's a helpful policy to add, so I'd support it.
Okay, motion on the table, all those in favor? 5-0. Cross-reference. My little note. Next policy is also new from MASC, EFC, the Universal Free School Meals. So, I mean, it's new, so it's not like you guys need the track changes version, so there is no track changes version, but this basically talks about the fact that we have universal free meals, and then there's a trickle-down effect, which is the next policy that I'm going to ask you to vote on, had to change a lot to accommodate the fact that we get a universal first free meal in breakfast and in lunch. So this one's easy because it's new. EFC, I am making the motion that we accept this as is.
Second.
Any comments or questions?
Am I wrong in having that comment and?
You don't want that comment there?
No, I'm just asking. You said it didn't need any changes, but there's a
There's a little
comment
comment
here.
there.
It did I print the wrong?
No, I had that as well. I didn't print it, but I think we wanted to remove MASC's reference to EFE because that's not a policy we've adopted
Correct.
at this
We're
time.
not there, that one is still, EFE is still under review by Ms. Sherburne and Christina Leal, so maybe we'll get a friendly amendment. Actually, I'm going to have to, because this is the second reading, I'll have to bring it back forward another time with a change to the cross-references.
So we're voting now
Without.
on this with that cross-reference struck out.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Because we have not yet even seen EFE yet? Correct.
Effie.
Yeah, we're not there yet. Good catch, thank you. So there's sometimes my own little notes over there in the sidebar. All right, all those in favor? 5-0. All right, and the last one from the policy subcommittee is EFD, the school nutrition program charge policy. So this guy, the bulk of the changes to this guy are the fact that because the first meal is free, then we're really only talking about what else can we charge you for, a la carte items, and the fact that we no longer allow, because we used to allow, children's accounts to go into arrears. And so there's something in here now about not letting the account balances go below zero. And then we changed the language around parent and guardian to caregivers, right? That's something that you maybe heard, I think, Dot say earlier this evening. We're trying to standardize our policies around that. Yes, Ms. Abel. Oh, wait, that was my motion. My
that was your-
motion is that we accept EFD as presented.
I will second that motion. I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
On the second page, weekly is highlighted, and I wasn't quite clear if that's because we weren't committing to weekly or the balance notices, or is it something we just switched to a new meal and balance tracking application, and I
All right, can you tell me?
it is right above the word refunds, above that section heading. It says family caregivers will receive automated low balance notices weekly. And I assumed it's related to the fact we switched platforms and we wanted to ensure there was a weekly versus a daily or a monthly or a.
Right. I think that rings a bell, that I maybe wanted to check on that, if that is in fact what we do.
I'm fine saying weekly in our policy. We just need to let whoever runs the program know that it should be sending a summary.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, voting time. 5-0.
Thank you so much for getting the clean versions. It's much easier to review.
That was Dr. Chirocek's idea. We give credit where credit is due. Yes, Ms. Coelho?
According to the sheet, we still had DJE.
Okay, so DJE is off of our, I withdrew that one this evening. And so, although it's on your meeting minutes, because I did hope to have that, but in fact, last meeting, the mayor asked that we send that policy over to his purchasing agent on the city side. It's his own personal purchasing agent. That was bad English, I'm sorry. To the city side purchasing agent, as well as a city solicitor, assistant city solicitor. And so next meeting, we'll bring forward a new version of DJE that is recommended by the city, assistant city solicitor and the purchasing agent. That's why there were 7. Good job catching that. Rachel, you taking back over as I still have it?
Well, so the policy subcommittee is bringing forward for number 3, a number of items for a first reading. These were the recommendations, and again, these are the clean copies. The track changes copies are available in the shared school committee Google Drive. Between now and the next time these are on our agenda, I would encourage you to take a look at the changes. I don't know if Ms. Visnick, you have any general statements about what the policy subcommittee looked at in these particular.
My advice is that if you're going to look at the track changes, don't be shocked. It's a very big revamp and they're all intertwined, which is why they're kind of in a batch together. When the policy subcommittee sat down, we kind of separated them out because this group really is, a whole chunk of this policy is now in some other policy. And so we had a lively meeting. I have one of the track changes file has a ton of notes on it, and I tried to say, okay, don't be concerned, for instance, that we're deleting this whole big block of text, which is an important block of text. In fact, it's now over in this other named policy. So that meeting took a fair amount of time, but I think we were pretty tedious and thorough with making sure we didn't lose any text. And the bulk of the changes did come to us from MASC. It's just a big cleanup relative to like Section I for instruction. There was stuff in there that didn't belong in there. And so now that's why there's a little mishmash across the different departments, across the different sections of the policy manual. Things have been moved out to where they really belong.
Okay, so there's no action for us at the table tonight, but between now and our next reading, all of the school committee members should review this clean version, and if they have inquiry, they can go to the shared drive to see the track changes and notes from the policy standing committee. Thank you, Ms. Bisnick. On the agenda, the next item is just reminders about upcoming meetings and dates. As the mayor mentioned, we'll be meeting with our representative and senator on Monday in a joint council session that is at the high school library, just so we have a better layout and room to welcome our city councilors into the high school. We also will be joined by BevCam. The agenda was shared with you all this evening. The city council does need to do 2 or 3 or maybe 4 very, very quick refer to committee type of things because they aren't having a meeting on the 4th because it's the night before the primary, and the city clerk and the different offices there are going to be preparing for the primary.
I will not be able to attend because I have to work.
Okay. We will miss you.
Sorry.
BevCam will fill you in after the fact. I'm sorry. At this point, the senator and representative plan to present information. They didn't necessarily request questions in advance, but I'm sure they'll be amenable to questions as we have them based on the information that they share with us. I think some of the things that Dr. Trocheck presented in terms of budget and timeline and what to expect will certainly be front of mind. And then we also have an opportunity to hear from Dr. Trocheck on the district goals and plans, and it will allow our city councilors an opportunity to hear more about our schools. Are there any questions on that? The other dates, we do have a negotiation session tomorrow with Unit A of the BTA. That will be at the McEwen School. And we will have another negotiation session on March 11th, so next Monday, so 2 Mondays. And then we all will meet again on the 13th of March. We will have a CISL meeting at 6:30 and then a regular school committee March 13th. So just make sure those are on your calendar if you're able to join us. I understand that some people won't. I believe Dr. Mackenzie DeFranz will be back at the table in March.
I need to be remote that meeting.
Okay, I will ensure that we troubleshoot with our friends and have remote access.
Or have the evening off.
Well, I need to make sure I have a quorum first. Yes.
Next Monday, what was that one?
The
11th?
The 11th. Yeah, the 11th. We have a session 3:30 for school committee, 4 o'clock with BTA for 2 hours.
Somehow I don't have it.
So the next 2 scheduled negotiating sessions are both with Unit A.
Unit A is posted for Thursday this week, yes. We haven't posted yet for the 11th.
Oh, okay. I get
But
you.
we'll-
Hopeful.
Yes. They had agreed to that date, yes. And that brings us to our final topic of the evening, a move to executive session. The chair would like to move that we meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for purposes 7 and 3, and not to reconvene in open session. Purpose 7, as a reminder, is to review and approve minutes from the executive session meeting of February 13th. And purpose 3 is to discuss strategy with respect to and in preparation for collective bargaining with the BTA and AFSCME units because an open discussion may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. And I will need to
I'll
do.
second your motion.
Thank you. I will need to do a roll call vote. Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Kimberly Coelho. Jeffrey Silva,
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick,
Yes.
Rachel Abel, yes. By a vote of 5-0, we are now moving into executive session, not to return to open session. This is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for purposes 7 and 3. 7, to approve our meeting records from February 13th, 2024 from our executive session, and purpose 3, to discuss strategy with respect to and in preparation for collective bargaining with the BTA and AFSCME units because open discussion may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. And with that, we thank BevCam for your help. I'll give you a moment.